I am Emily, and as I approach my 25th birthday this year, I reflect on the 5 years of marriage I've shared with my husband. Our union blessed us with a delightful son named Kevin, who recently turned 4. Initially, I embraced a full-time role after tying the knot, but my current professional commitment involves part-time work at the same company. My husband, 3 years my senior, is a 28-year-old named John. Our love story was rooted in John's passionate pursuits, which ultimately led to our marriage. However, the John I knew during our dating days underwent a transformation after we exchanged vows, revealing a more domineering side. Interestingly, John has a 21-year-old sister named Sarah, whom he showers with attention, perhaps due to their significant age gap. Before marriage, I didn't pay much heed to John's close relationship with Sarah, assuming they got along well. However, post-marriage, I started observing changes in Sarah's behavior. She frequently visits our home unannounced, putting me in a position where I feel like I'm running around as a maid catering to her demands. Despite her unexpected visits, Sarah never brings any tokens of appreciation, and in her presence, it's as if I am invisible. During these visits, Sarah addresses John exclusively, making me feel marginalized. John, oblivious to my discomfort, not only entertains her requests, but also blames me when I express my concerns. Sarah's presence disrupts our family dinner routine, with John insisting that I serve her even if I haven't prepared enough for an additional guest. The blame for any inconvenience is unfairly placed on me, making me feel unappreciated. The dynamic between John, Sarah, and me becomes more evident during family meals. Despite my efforts to prepare meals for my husband, son, and myself, John often redirects my attention to Sarah, disregarding our family unit. Their disregard for basic etiquette, such as cleaning up after themselves, adds to my growing frustration. It appears as if they view me not as a wife or sister, but as a mere maid. Furthermore, the isolation extends to my son, Kevin, who is treated as if he were brought to work by a maid. The lack of acknowledgement towards him only deepens my sense of exclusion within my own family. Despite my commitment to maintaining a semblance of normalcy, John consistently separates me and Kevin from his private conversations with Sarah. The situation takes a toll on me, especially when John loudly instructs me to buy a cake for Sarah at an inconvenient time, disregarding the impact on Kevin's bedtime. It becomes evident that the respect and consideration I deserve as a wife and mother are overshadowed by John's prioritization of Sarah's needs. As I hesitate, Sarah reinforces John's directive, emphasizing where to buy the cake. The blatant disregard for my time and the undermining of my role within the family leaves me feeling more like an overworked maid than a cherished wife and mother. The need for open communication and mutual respect becomes increasingly apparent in order to address the imbalances and foster a healthier family dynamic. I urgently desired the item, and John, in his haste, urged me to expedite the process. While it was permissible for him to have a late start today, I couldn't fathom the reason for such an attitude when Sarah was present. In the midst of John loudly assigning blame to me, I foresaw my inevitable journey to the cake shop, compelling me to make the reluctant decision to embark on this venture. The cake shop near the station had a closing time of 9 p.m., prompting me to expedite my preparations. As I readied myself, I inadvertently overheard a heated conversation between John and Sarah, who spoke loud enough for me to catch phrases, like "she's so inconsiderate," and "why did you marry her?" Unable to leave Kevin behind, I decided to bring him along. While preparing him, I couldn't escape the sound of John's loud voice from the living room, threatening divorce if there were any further defiance. Kevin, though not comprehending the words, seemed to sense the tension between his parents. Suppressing my intense emotions, I asked Kevin about his cake preference. His face lit up, and he expressed a desire for a cake adorned with an abundance of fruits. Our journey to the cake shop became a delightful conversation about cakes. momentarily pushing aside the earlier conflict with John. Arriving at the cake shop just before closing time, Kevin and I were fortunate to find the cake Sarah desired. We ended up purchasing 2 cakes, including the fruit-loaded one Kevin wanted. Back home, I served the cakes to Sarah and John, then proceeded to prepare Kevin's cake. As I placed the cake in front of Kevin, Sarah changed her mind and decided she wanted that particular cake after all. Ignoring Kevin's protests, John moved the chosen cake to Sarah, asserting his right to choose. Unable to contain my dissatisfaction any longer, I voiced my concerns to John and Sarah, leading to John threatening divorce once again. Kevin, holding my hand tightly, looked anxious, and in a surprising turn of events, expressed his love for a cake with strawberries on it. Despite the chaos, Kevin mentioned his preference while eating the cake Sarah initially desired. It felt like I was subjecting him to undue distress, considering the 3 adults, including myself, were making a 4-year-old endure such a situation. Realizing the unfairness, I took Kevin to another room to enjoy his cake peacefully. Meanwhile, John apologized to Sarah for his perceived stinginess, but I refrained from retorting, not wanting to expose Kevin to the notion of divorce. Watching Kevin innocently savor his cake provided a moment of solace, despite the tension with John and Sarah. After finishing the cakes, Kevin and I, disregarding both John and Sarah, opted for a late bath and a night of sleep in Kevin's bed. The next morning, I awoke to find that Sarah had already left, leaving behind the remnants of a tumultuous evening. I had just begun the morning routine, intending to wake up both John and Kevin and prepare breakfast, when a sudden cry pierced the air. Hastening to Kevin's side, I discovered a shocking sight. The piggy bank gifted by my father lay shattered, and all the hard-earned money he had diligently saved was gone. It was a heartbreaking realization, especially considering that Kevin had a nightly ritual of bidding goodnight to the piggy bank before drifting off to sleep. Reflecting on the events of the previous night, I recalled that John and Sarah were the only ones present in the living room at the time. Curiosity led me to inquire about the piggy bank from John, who nonchalantly revealed that Sarah had needed some money and had taken it from Kevin's savings. While Kevin continued to cry and tremble in my arms, the depth of his hurt resonated so profoundly with me that tears welled up in my own eyes. The pain intensified as I grappled with the realization that John seemed to prioritize and care for his sister, Sarah, over our own son, Kevin. A surge of anger and sadness overcame me, creating a tumultuous mix of emotions. Unable to contain my frustration, I confronted John about his actions, expressing my anger and disappointment at his insensitivity towards Kevin's distress. In response to my emotional outburst, John stared intensely at me, retreated to the bedroom, and returned with an unexpected item: divorce papers. The revelation shook me to the core, as I had no prior knowledge of their existence. In the midst of this emotional upheaval, John abruptly left the house with a loud bang, leaving behind a distraught Kevin, who had never before cried over issues involving John and Sarah. Feeling the weight of Kevin's pain, I decided to offer him solace by suggesting we skip daycare for the day. To my surprise, Kevin responded with a resounding yes, displaying a faint smile. We spent the day at the park, playing hide-and-seek, enjoying the sandbox, and relishing our time on the slide. Despite the troubles brewing at my workplace, I managed to secure a day off after explaining the situation to my understanding colleagues. Upon returning home, Kevin, visibly tired, fell asleep on my lap during lunch. Rather than engaging in household chores, I decided to savor the precious moments, appreciating the innocence of his sleeping face and rhythmic breathing. As I began to doze off, a sudden noise from the entrance jolted me awake. It seemed like the front door had opened, but it wasn't John returning home. Suspicion lingered as I held my breath, clutching Kevin and hiding in the bedroom closet with only my bag of valuables. As I listened intently, a familiar voice permeated the air. It was Sarah's voice, resonating with an air of familiarity. An unexpected turn of events unfolded as Sarah, seemingly on a mission, rummaged through the house, searching for something elusive. Fear initially gripped me, but upon recognizing Sarah's voice, a new wave of uncertainty washed over me. The day took an unexpected turn, presenting challenges and mysteries that I hadn't anticipated. I found myself surrounded by a myriad of perplexing questions as I observed Sarah in our home. The foremost of these inquiries centered around the mysterious key she possessed and the purpose behind her relentless search. Intrigued, I cautiously cracked open the closet door to catch a glimpse of Sarah's activities. To my surprise, she was energetically rummaging through drawers and doors, emitting an audible sigh before engaging in a lengthy phone call. Despite my diligent search in the designated area, the elusive item remained elusive. Disheartened, I expressed my findings to Sarah, who responded with a resigned acknowledgement. "It seems I have wasted my time," she declared, before abruptly mentioning John and her intention to head home. The utterance of John's name piqued my curiosity, leaving me to ponder the nature of their shared quest. As Sarah made her exit, the distinct click of the front door locking echoed through the house. Emerging from my concealment in the closet, I attended to the task of putting my son, Kevin, to bed. The peculiar events of the evening lingered in my mind, prompting me to reflect on the situation. Suspicion began to brew within me, contemplating whether John possessed knowledge about his belongings, and if the search pertained to one of my possessions. In the aftermath, I found myself grappling with the enigma of Sarah's intrusion. Despite our earlier conversation, the motive behind her presence remained elusive. John, once familiar, now appeared as a stranger, evoking a disconcerting amalgamation of repulsion and fear. Swiftly, I gathered the essentials for Kevin and myself, preparing for an abrupt departure. By the time Kevin stirred from his nap, my preparations were complete. "Let's head to Grandpa's place now, Kevin," I declared, and we embarked on a journey to the station, boarding a train bound for my parents' house. Fortunately, their residence was conveniently situated, just 2 stations away, hastening our arrival. Upon reaching my parents' home, I found solace in their welcoming demeanor. Unbeknownst to them, the unexpected visit was fueled by a newfound fear arising from the unsettling events with John and Sarah. As I recounted the perplexing encounter, my parents listened attentively, offering both comfort and support. Amidst the reassurance, my mother speculated on the potential target of Sarah's search, suggesting that it might involve my financial assets, specifically cash cards. She shared her own past experience as the CEO of a successful online shop for handmade goods, a fact I had never disclosed to John in detail. The decision to marry and prioritize child-rearing had led her to pass on the leadership to trusted friends, a detail John remained unaware of. My mother explained that John, aware of her previous CEO status, likely harbored suspicions regarding her financial stability. Despite having transitioned to a part-time role, she continued to oversee the company from home, a detail intentionally kept from John due to his questionable financial habits. The revelation of this hidden truth added a layer of complexity to the situation, intensifying my concerns about the motivations behind John and Sarah's actions. He provided me with a meager allowance of only $200 per month for food expenses and audaciously suggested that I abandon my job to embrace a full-time housewife role alongside Kevin. This limited financial support made it challenging to make ends meet, and I adamantly resisted the notion of becoming a full-time homemaker. After much reluctance, he eventually allowed me to work part-time at my current job. However, to ensure my commitment and deter thoughts of divorce, he insisted on having me sign a post-marital property waiver through a lawyer. Since the birth of Kevin, I've been grappling with a mere $200 for food, forcing me to dip into my savings to cover Kevin's nursery fees and clothing expenses. Despite my financial struggles, I refrained from seeking additional funds from John beyond the allocated food budget. Perhaps John assumes I have substantial savings due to my silence on financial matters. Observing Sarah's apparent financial distress and John's belief in my savings, it dawned on me that they might be searching for my cash cards. In anticipation of such a situation, I've been diligently saving for Kevin in a separate account, with a portion of my salary directly deposited into it monthly. While it seems plausible that they are seeking my cash cards, I always keep my valuables, including cash cards, with me. However, the mystery deepens as I contemplate the possibility of Sarah having access to our house even in our absence, with John possibly permitting it. Taking my father's advice to heart, I decided to relocate my valuables to my parents' house, storing them securely in their safe. The pressing question remained: why were Sarah and John desperate for money to the extent of resorting to such actions? Pondering over this, Kevin tearfully revealed that his piggy bank was broken, and he couldn't fulfill his promise to save up. My father, visibly angered by this revelation, prompted me to confront John about the situation. Realizing the urgency, my mother suggested finding out their true intentions before they could use a potential divorce as an excuse. With this in mind, I decided to record the upcoming conversation with John to unveil their motives. My parents, eager to help, decided to consult a family friend who was a lawyer. Upon returning home, I discreetly began recording as John arrived. To my surprise, he immediately inquired about the whereabouts of my cash cards. When pressed for an explanation, he provided evasive answers. Faced with silence, John attempted to manipulate the situation, pushing the signed divorce papers towards me, accusing me of draining all his money, and demanding my part-time earnings for his sister. In response, I stood my ground, asserting that the money was intended for Kevin's savings, leaving John frustrated and angry. Kevin's disregard for my financial security and his apparent preference for Sarah over me became painfully evident when he uttered the words, "You don't have to save for Kevin, and I would not be able to make a living if I divorced him." These words, spoken with a tone that seemed to value Sarah more than my own husband, struck me to the core. In response to this revelation, I found myself silently halting the meal preparation, discreetly placing the divorce papers in a prepared bag, and taking Kevin's hand as I led him towards the door. John, seemingly unapologetic, loudly declared, "Well, I'm serious about the divorce. Don't ever come back." In defiance, I asserted that I would not return to a home where a stranger could come and go as she pleased, leaving the house with finality. Reflecting on the situation, I pondered whether it was too much to consider my sister-in-law as a stranger. The aftermath of my departure included a barrage of messages and calls from John, all of which I intentionally ignored. Turning off my phone, I sought refuge at my parents' house, seeking their guidance. Desperate to convey the gravity of the situation, I played for my parents a recording I had just made, accompanied by the completed divorce papers handed to me by John. Despite expressing my lack of love or affection for John, I admitted to still caring about Kevin. My parents, conflicted, suggested that I proceed with the divorce to spare Kevin's feelings. However, they also acknowledged the potential emotional toll it might take on our young son. As I grappled with this decision, Kevin, unaware of the turmoil, expressed his hunger. My mother, ever compassionate, prepared his favorite dish hamburgers. Witnessing this tender moment between my mother and Kevin, I couldn't hold back tears. Kevin, blissfully ignorant of the complexities, enjoyed the meal with delight, declaring his desire to eat Grandma's hamburgers every day. Overwhelmed by Kevin's innocent kindness, I couldn't contain my emotions. My father, witnessing my tears, reassured Kevin that they were tears of happiness, not sadness. Kevin, with a heartwarming gesture, insisted that the hamburger, filled with my love, was delicious and encouraged me to share in the joy. Touched by the familial warmth, Kevin expressed his belief that being with family was a blessing. Surprised by his sentiment, I affirmed the importance of family. My father, with genuine sincerity, asked Kevin if he wanted to live with them as a family. Kevin, laughing joyously, responded with an enthusiastic "of course. We're family," bringing smiles to everyone present. As we shared a meal filled with laughter and conversation, I couldn't help but reflect on the happiness that had been missing from my life. Despite contemplating divorce, the natural and carefree atmosphere at that moment made me realize that parting with John was the right decision. And, as I planned to share this revelation with Kevin, I found comfort in the prospect of a new beginning, free from the emotional strain of an unfulfilling marriage. Embarking on the journey of preparing for my divorce was a task that demanded both emotional resilience and strategic planning. The initial step involved reaching out to a lawyer, a friend of my father, whose expertise and guidance I sought to navigate the complexities of the impending separation. A meeting was promptly arranged for the following day, during which I found solace in the company of my father and our canine companion, Kevin, as we shared a night filled with their comforting laughter. As I lay in bed that night, sharing the same room with my mother, I couldn't help but drift into a reverie of my childhood, reminiscing about the days when life seemed simpler and less entangled. The following morning, upon turning on my smartphone, I was greeted by an overwhelming influx of over 200 calls and messages from John, revealing the depths of his emotional instability. The sheer weight of it prompted me to shut off my smartphone, seeking a momentary respite. A significant development unfolded as I engaged in a detailed discussion with the lawyer, outlining the intricacies of my situation and reaffirming my resolve to proceed with the divorce. The legal formalities were successfully executed, culminating in the lawyer's scheduled meeting with John the next day. The lawyer later visited my parents' house to elucidate the unfolding circumstances, shedding light on Sarah's mounting debts from the casino and shopping addiction, for which John had unwittingly become a guarantor. It became apparent that a plan had been devised to utilize my savings to offset Sarah's debts, adding a layer of complexity to the divorce proceedings. Despite the unexpected twists, the lawyer assured me that the divorce papers I had submitted had already been accepted. John, in an emotional plea, expressed his reluctance to let another man take me away, revealing a deeper layer of insecurity. The resolution of the divorce brought a sense of relief, despite John's emotional turmoil. Surprisingly, he willingly signed a pledge to provide monthly child support of $340 for Kevin, a gesture that somewhat mitigated the anticipated disagreement over financial responsibilities. A subsequent conversation with John offered insight into his motivations, acknowledging that he had sought to keep me financially bound to prevent the dissolution of our marriage. As the divorce proceedings reached their conclusion, John, with a tone notably devoid of his previous aggression, candidly admitted to spoiling his younger sister, Sarah, as a misguided expression of sibling love. His jealousy towards Kevin surfaced as a manifestation of the fear of losing me. However, my unwavering commitment to the divorce prompted him to plea for a delay in my remarriage until the settlement of Sarah's debts, a request I firmly rejected. With the divorce finalized, I found strength in my decision and a newfound sense of peace. Conversations about my future life ensued with my parents, leading to the decision to reside in their house until Kevin reached maturity. Kevin, too, underwent a transition, transferring to a different nursery as part of the process of building a stable environment for him. Returning to my role as the company president, I shared the details of my personal situation with work friends, who offered their support and understanding. The aftermath of the divorce unfolded as John and Sarah informed their parents about their disowned status, a consequence of revealing their debts. The once close-knit family found themselves living in a cramped old apartment, constantly at odds with each other, and grappling with the consequences of their choices. In contrast, my life took a positive turn, surrounded by the love and support of my family. The once tumultuous chapter of my marriage was now behind me, and I embraced the happiness that came with being in the company of those who truly cared for me. The challenges of the past were replaced with a newfound strength, and I looked forward to the future with optimism and resilience.